Hi, everyone. I think let's get started. We've got a few people who've joined us, and as others join in, I will admit them. I'm hoping that none of you actually hear those pings, and it's just on my end. So without further ado, let's get started, if that's okay with everyone. So welcome. Today is the second Hindsight is 2020 series, and I'm really glad to have Ashley with us. I met Ashley virtually, I guess maybe a few weeks ago, Ashley, and really kind of connected, I think, on so many different levels. And I am really, really glad and really stoked that Ashley agreed to come and join us and share some of her life stories, especially as we try to normalize the so-called mistakes or the goof ups or a lot of those things that perhaps a lot of us don't talk about it every day, but they are what they kind of make us. So that's what really the goal of these series is. So without further ado, let's jump straight in. Before we kind of go into the introductions and everything, I just want to share a little bit. Can everyone see my screen? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. A little bit about myself and PM Dojo. I'm a mom to a 6-year-old. I live in Vancouver, BC, Canada, just a little north of US, where there's a lot of action happening today and yesterday. We're all kind of really interested to see what happens. So I live in Vancouver. I've lived in the Bay Area as well and worked in a few different countries. Um, I have been in product for about 19 years. This is going to be my 20th year. And it's been a fun ride. It's been a tiring ride, a fun ride, a stressful ride, but I'm still in it with all of its tribulations. I started as an engineer, turned into PM very, very quickly in my career. Did not believe that I would survive as a developer. I think the product side excited me a lot more. And I've remained ever since. And in my last role, I joined a SaaS company as a director of product and hired and built product teams. Sorry, there's a lot of pinging happening in the background as people are joining. I left the company as the president and the GM. So kind of worked my way through leading the entire business and operating it as a CEO. Right now, I work as a fractional product executive, helping companies solve those pesky, wicked people and product problems and operationalize product management in their companies. And I also founded PM Dojo. And essentially, PM Dojo, it was just founded this year, and it is a platform to provide, I guess, a safe place for PMs at any skill level, whether you're an aspiring or perhaps an experienced product leader looking to grow skills and practice your skills, just like dojo and martial arts. So this is for product management. And my goal and vision is to really remove barriers and make learning and growing in product management more affordable and accessible. We have about 500 community members, about 30 mentors, and they're growing, and we're across 8 countries. And if anyone's interested to get involved with PM Dojo, join our community. It's free. You can get access to free curated learning. It's not my content. My content is part of another program within PM Dojo. But if you feel overwhelmed, kind of looking and searching for information or wanting to learn about product management, you can join the community and access to our curated learning. If you believe and if you think that there is a particular offering or a skill gap that we can address, let us know and get involved as a speaker, facilitator, or a mentor so that you can practice your skills as well as grow your skills. So that's a little bit about PM Dojo. Moving on, I just wanted to share, we do have our signature product accelerator program, and this offers an opportunity for aspiring or early stage PMs to work as a product manager before you get your first role as a PM. So it's really a learn by doing. You solve a real problem, you work with a mentor, work as a team, and learn all of the soft and hard skills. if anyone's interested, let me know, reach out to me, and I can kind of help and support you in that way. So without all of those things now taken, 1 second, I'm just going to again let some people join. Sorry about this. Okay, let's get started. So about our speaker, Ashley, she is the VP of Product at Discus. And Ashley, I would love if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to everyone here today. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Ashley Wali, and I am currently the VP of Product at Discuss.io. So we are a smart video platform that helps companies that are doing online market research and CX interviews to organize their projects, conduct their conversations, and then do analysis at the end to determine what they've learned and what the next steps should be. So I've been with the company for about 3 years, a little over 3 years, and I've worked primarily in product and program management, project management, kind of all P's, for 13 years or so. And I've worked across a number of different industries, so I have kind of a varied background in terms of what experiences I've had and things. And I'm located in Seattle, Washington. Before that, I was in the Bay Area, and I also spent a little time in Mexico and Washington, D.C. But I'm originally from the Midwest, so I've got it all covered. All the places.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. I am going to, the agenda is really, really simple. We'll start with just a little housekeeping. And we'll go straight to the fireside chat without the fire, and really kind of a casual and a safe place to ask questions and keep it kind of free flowing. And then if we do have about 10-15 minutes towards the end, then we can definitely leave open for questions. So for housekeeping, it's really simple. I would love and encourage everyone to participate. And there will be a Slido app, and you're going to get the event ID as well. If you would actually want to go there, you can put your questions there, and then we will be taking all of the questions that a lot of you have submitted already when you registered for this AMA. So we're going to be taking questions from there. But if you do have any particular thing that does come up, please feel free to enter on Slido as well. And it would be great to see everyone's faces, because I'm not seeing anyone here. So, you don't have to be presentable or anything. If you are comfortable, please, it would be really nice to see everyone's faces. Otherwise, it looks like I'm just looking at the wall. And I think it's also going to help Ashley and I just kind of gauge the temperature in the room, and, kind of get a sense whether we need to tweak a few things around. So if anyone's comfortable, please do come on the video. It would be lovely to see faces, especially these days when we don't get to meet people. But without having said that, let's just begin. Ashley, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Awesome. So for the questions, what I've done is I've taken a lot of the questions that people submitted and some of our questions as well, and I put them up on Slido. I'm just going to let someone else join. Give me 1 second. Okay. If you want to take your phone and scan the QR code, or simply go to Slido and type in the event name 99887, you should be able to see all of the questions that were submitted, and you can start voting. So you can put your votes on multiple questions, and we will just kind of go from the highest votes to the lowest votes. If you do have some other questions that do come up that are not on Slido, you can just go to the next tab on the Q&A on Slido and just enter those questions, and we're going to take it from there. So I'm just going to actually stop my screen share. Did everyone take the Slido number, the event ID, and the QR code? Okay.
We can stick it in chat probably too.
Yeah.
I at least.
Yes, I will do that. There is everyone. Okay, give me 1 second. I am just going to bring it up. Okay. So you should be able to see the event ID here as well. So we'll just give a couple minutes for people to start, and then we go. Ashley, if you want to vote too, you can.
I'll talk about whatever.
So evenly distributed. Okay, why don't we start? And then as things shift, we will pivot in classic PM language. So the first one, my tabs are all over the places. Okay, there you go. So the first question, Ashley, for you is, what were some of the key leadership skills that you had to learn on the way?
That's a good one. I think, the first thing that comes to mind is leading through influence. And as a product manager, and I first learned this as a project manager. That's I sort of came into tech initially doing copywriting and things, actually, but when I moved more into the technical side of things, was kind of playing a hybrid role for a consulting company, doing the day-to-day execution of the work, but also doing a lot of account management and client services around kind of taking what is this thing they want to accomplish, and then how do we turn that into something people can work on, and how do we think about the scope and the implications and things like that. So I was kind of doing product management without knowing that that's what that was at the time. But those experiences more really taught me that you have to, those are roles where you don't often have direct accountability for the people who are accomplishing, doing the work that you need them to do. So it's a lot more about leading through influence and helping sell your vision and sell your ideas, and really build up a deep trust within your team, so that people are willing to follow your lead when they don't necessarily have to, because they don't report to you, right? You can't fire them, you can't give them a raise or a bonus or something. So that's probably one of the biggest leadership skills that I think I've had to learn over time. And I think in doing that, it's put me in a position where I have really good relationships with former employees who I'm still in contact with. And, it by getting to know people and what they appreciate and value and how they communicate and just all the things that make somebody tick, it puts you in a better position both to support them when you are their direct manager, but then also how to help motivate them, to do their best work, or, we all have to do things that we don't necessarily we're not interested in, right? There's some sort of work that you have to invest in, but it's not very exciting. And that's how you get a team through those times, is through trust. And you kind of have to build up like your bank of favor, so you can pull from it when you need to. So those are a couple of things I think I've really learned around leadership. And I think another thing is communication. Communication is something that comes naturally to me. I've always been a writer, and it is something that I think is super critical to helping get a team on board with something, and just making sure that everyone is clear on things. When I have looked at, employee NPS scores and, company survey results, communication and lack of clarity and lack of direction is always what will tank your score. Obviously if the business isn't doing well, that's a problem. But, from a team management perspective, if the communication isn't there and the clarity of people understanding what it is we're trying to do and why isn't in place, people will not be very happy, and they won't be nearly as productive than as they could be. So I think those are probably two big ones that I have taken away over the years.
So Ashley, I'll ask a follow-up question. Can you think of a time when, let's say, leading by influence did not go the way you wanted, or perhaps, even in communication, perhaps kind of tankered and backfired at you?
Yeah, with communication in particularly, I often find that what I feel like is enough is not actually enough. When I feel like I'm over communicating, that's when I just might be getting there. And I have found there's a huge importance in bringing people along for the journey and helping them understand not just like, okay, this is the direction we're going in, but why we got there. And if I don't stop and take the time to walk people through, this is what we were seeing, and this is the testing and research that we did, and this is how, things performed in our usability tests, or these are, this is feedback from real users, and this is why we should do this, and this is how long it's going to take, and now this is why you should say yes to it. If I don't go through that whole process, it fails often, because somebody's just hearing this is how much we should invest in this and why, and this is the thing I'm not getting instead. And it is hard, I think, certainly for me as a product leader to invest in that time to bring everybody up to speed. But if I don't, I almost always regret it. So I think that's one when it doesn't go well, it's usually because I'm not putting the time into it that is probably necessary to really bring everyone along on the understanding of how I got to where I got. From a leadership by influence, I think I've been blessed with some really great teams to work with. There have been relationships for sure, but if they're grounded in if the person feels that I'm truly invested in them as a human, it makes it go a lot easier. The asks, the feedback, if I need to share something with someone, they know it's coming from a place of respect and a place of compassion, and not a place of power or authority. So, I think I've been able to navigate a lot of situations because that is not my leadership style, to come at something and say, oh, I'm the boss and, you need to do what I say. It's very much leading from behind. It's very much servant leadership. And I think that it can break down a lot of barriers that otherwise make people reluctant to either, connect with you or be willing to do things when you ask them to go above and beyond.
And would you be able to give an example of maybe a scenario where a more maybe a servant leadership style of an ask versus or a feedback versus the other style, which is more I'm the boss and I'm it's more hierarchical and those kind of things? Would you be able to maybe just kind of help for people who might be wanting to figure out what that might look like?
Yeah. So to me, servant leadership is about enabling your team to do their best work. So it's a lot of, it's being the servant of the team. It's saying, how can I help you? How can I unblock you? How can I support you? And to me, that's not just professional, that's personal as well. Like, I like to get to know my employees. I like to understand what's going on in their life. I like to understand, and celebrate things, especially if you're working, as many of us are right now, remotely or with a remote team, getting to know things like holidays in different countries, traditions and cultures, and what milestones in life are really highly celebrated, and then being able to join in on that, or acknowledge and recognize and ask someone, what are they doing for this holiday, or how is their family preparing for this event. It goes a long way there. So that to me is what servant leadership is all about. It's saying, yes, I will be willing to, track that thing down that you need, or I will follow up with this person so that you can focus on doing this other work. And it's also respecting, the way that people like to communicate and the way that they like to work. So, there's kind of an old article, I think it was, or maybe it was a book, I don't remember, about the maker's schedule and the manager's schedule. And as managers, it's really easy for us to forget about that and just think, well, my day is full of meetings and interruptions, and I will just schedule a meeting or interrupt someone as I need to, as it's convenient for me. But most of the people that we actually work with on a regular basis are on a maker schedule, where they need long periods of uninterrupted focus time. And so as a servant leader, that's one of the things that I try to keep in mind is, how many interruptions am I putting on my team a day? How much am I asking them to get out of their flow, to do something that maybe could wait 2 hours? And so I try to be cognizant about when I'm scheduling things, and when I'm asking for an update in chat or a question that's going to interrupt someone. So that to me are some examples of servant leadership. And then I think on the other side, it's a lot about asking for things without explaining why. To me, more of an authoritarian style is, this is what we're doing because this is what we're doing, because this is what the business has told us to do, or this is what I've decided is important. And not so much about not respecting people enough to understand that they will be more motivated and they will do a better job if they understand why they're being asked to do this thing. The context behind stuff is just so incredibly important. And I think leaders who don't take the time to bring their team along that conversation are really missing an opportunity to build solid relationships, but also have more productive teams and better results.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. And again, for those of you who joined a little bit later, please go to Slido if you do have any questions that you don't see on this screen, and under the Q&A tab, you can put in your questions, and we're going to take that after we kind of go through all of this. So the second question, Ashley, is, what do you regret the most and why?
So this one, there was kind of a later question. The next one, what would you tell your younger self? Yeah. So these two kind of go together. I think from a career perspective, probably the only thing that I regret, and this is more just like in hindsight, I would have told my younger self to do this, would be to get some big company experience. So I've mostly worked at startups, and I like startups, and I like the chaos, and I like the impact that I can have, and I like having purview over everything that's happening within the company. There's so much about startups that I think are really special. But as I look at my career arc and where I want to go going forward, there are boxes within the technology community now that didn't really exist 10, 12 years ago. Where the bigger, more established tech companies really are a proving ground and a good kind of trial by fire around building those key skills early on, and also being a kind of a badge of honor, or a merit badge of, okay, I could get into this company, and I was here for a couple of years, and that means that this person has had a really solid foundation in product management. And it hasn't held me back to date, but as I look at as I work with colleagues and networking and things, some of the questions that come up are things about a scale that I've not worked at really. So it's like I can't always contribute to some of those conversations, because that is one aspect of technology that I just don't have a ton of experience in, and would tell my younger self it will be a better kind of launching pad, I think, to have that understanding of what does it mean to work for hundreds of millions of users, what does it mean to process billions of dollars in payments, how do you do that on a scale. It's a lot of the same challenges, but just magnified.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I would both encourage my younger self to do, and probably would be a regret as I've seen kind of pivot points in, as I've taken different jobs along the way. The big tech companies were not super big tech companies when I was, early in my career, and, could have been a really good entry point for me that I kind of wish I would have done.
Are there any personal regrets that you can share?
Let's see. The way I broke up with a boyfriend, I regret not, I didn't have the words. I didn't have like style at that point at 18. So I think I handled a breakup really poorly. That's probably a life regret. That's probably that. I don't know. I'm glad I don't have a ton of regrets, but when I hurt somebody in a way that I know I could have avoided, that's probably regrets. That's the first one that comes to mind.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think, with this question, something, if I may share, is that I think we'll always have, if it's not regret, we'll always, I think, have that hindsight, right? Like perhaps we could have done this differently, whether it's personal or I think professional. And something that I've learned, over many, many years and with countless gray hairs recently is that in my younger days, I had put all of the effort and energy into the career side. That's what I knew. That's what, was something that I accepted and believed strongly that the top that I wanted to reach or I would like to reach only comes from hard work. And I completely immersed myself in it. And I'm not generalizing it for anyone, but that's how I was. And, I because of that, I forgot, and whether it was intentional or subconscious, I never put a lot of emphasis or thought process on the personal side. Yes, I married the guy that we dated, since we were 19 years old. We are still happily married. We have, a beautiful 6-year-old. But a lot of those things in terms of, when do kids happen, or the fact that in the pursuit of reaching the top, whatever that top was for me, and that for me, that was leading a business, I completely forgot self-care. And I forgot everything that is to actually take care, or even think that it would be okay to take half an hour care. And that cost me heavily last year, and all of that reaching the top became meaningless. I actually stepped down, and I decided to step down. So I think something that I share with a lot of people early on in their career is, it might seem like a cliche, without health, there is nothing. But I think as a PM or as anyone who is in product, it is a hard role. It is a very, very challenging and demanding role. And if we do all of those empathy for our users and our customers and our stakeholders, but if we don't have empathy for ourselves, there is a cost that people do pay. I'm not saying everyone pays, but there is a cost that one can pay, and it's only a matter of whether you want to pay the cost then or whether you want to pay a cost later on with interest. So, for all of you who are early on in your career, please keep that in mind, that self-care is important. You can go on vacation. You don't have to slog 70, 80 hours a week to reach the top, and those top can look very different. It doesn't always have to be in a title as an executive or a business leader. So something that I really, really wanted to share, that even though I am not the person who is on the questioning side here. So next question, Ashley, what is your advice for setting goals and planning during such uncertain times?
I think my main advice is just don't try and do it too far out. Even the best of times, I have, a kind of a 3-year general vision of like where I want this product to go. And then I have a 1-year, like somewhat set in stone, roadmap of like, these are the major boulders that I want to hit this year. And then there's a quarterly plan that's like, actually, this is what I'm planning to accomplish in the next 3 months. And I make it really clear to everybody that like anything that's outside the quarter that we're currently talking about is conjecture. It's conjecture. Because especially, and I'm coming from more of a startup background where things change quickly. I think most of us probably experienced this with COVID, but anybody that works in startups is no stranger to something coming out of the sky and pivoting everything. You land a brand new huge customer that wants a whole bunch of stuff done that's, custom for them. Or you finally get funding and now all of a sudden it opens the floodgates to a whole bunch of stuff that you weren't able to even think about before. There's just a lot of stuff that comes at you, and so I think if you try and actually plan more than 3 months in advance, it's a thought exercise more than it is something that the business or customers should be expecting to see, in 5 months from now. So I think more than anything, it's just be realistic about how far out you can accurately plan, and working with your leadership team to say, yes, we're thinking ahead. Because that's one concern that I see a lot is, well, if we don't, if I don't have a plan more than 3 months out, we're not thinking that far out. And it's very different to be thinking about where should the product be going, and where does the company need to be investing longer term, and specifically what are we accomplishing in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Those are, and I think, there's room in our heads for both of those things. So it's more about reassuring the leadership that, no, we are thinking this far out in advance. We're just not putting a deadline on paper because we know that these priorities might shift, or something new might come in, or something that we thought was super important might not be relevant at all, 6 months from now. So, and that's one big thing. And then I would say the second big thing in an uncertain time is like, don't pretend it's not there. Like if the uncertainty is there and something about your product or your usage or your business is massively changing, go with it. Right? Like, don't follow a plan for the sake of having a plan. One of the things that I saw with usage of my product during March and April was, first of all, business shot up and then fell off and then shot up again. So it was very different usage, and it was different user types that were coming in. And they were touching features that, frankly, were kind of on the shopping block to be sunsetted because they really hadn't gotten a lot of use. And then all of a sudden they were super popular. And as it turns out, they hadn't really been maintained super well. And there were some bugs, and it's really slow, and this and that. And so it was like, okay, we got to drop what we're doing, and we need to actually invest in shoring up this part of the product that we really hadn't given any love to for a while. And it's paid back. Like, the usage of that feature has continued to grow. But that's something that, if we had decided in January, this is what we're doing for the year, and not allowed ourselves to see what was actually happening in the product and adjust to it, we would be off building something that is completely not relevant right now, I think, for where we are in the world and the type of customer that has come and found us during this pandemic.
And Ashley, if we were to change the perspective a little bit, I think from a business to, let's say, personal side, for a lot of people who might be thinking about what's next, should I be applying for these kind of roles, or should I be doing something else, or should I go back to school, given the uncertain times right now? Are there any things that you would like to share from an advice standpoint, or what you've seen that might help?
Well, I can tell you as a mother that I do not ever recommend anyone make a major life decision in the first year of having a child. I very strongly believe that. Do not move, do not change your job, do not get divorced, do not get married. Whatever major life change you're contemplating, wait a little bit, because, and I imagine that could apply, in other situations as well. I've seen so many friends go through the same thing that I have with respect to like joining the world of parenthood, that I do always give that advice from that perspective. But, I think I come from the school of dive right in and then drown until you swim. So I'm not a great one to ask about certifications and MBAs and things like that. That is experience that I have gotten on the ground, and I have nothing against them. I actually loved school, and it's an environment where I learn really well. But the opportunities kind of kept coming to learn as I went, and it never felt like the right time to kind of step back and really invest in that. And now I think I'm kind of at the point where I essentially have an MBA just from having had my hands in a lot of different places over the years. But I think if you're contemplating making a change or going back to school, one of the things as I was considering going to school that the exercise that I did was, how much of my life and my money am I going to be investing in this thing? And how likely am I on the other side of it to get the thing that I'm looking for? Like, is it critical that I have this degree or this certification in order to get the thing I want? Or is there another path to getting the thing that I want, which is just knocking on all the doors until someone lets me in? And do I save $100,000 doing that? Do I save 2 years doing that? And that's not the path for everyone. There are really it's probably the harder path, frankly, because there are really well established entry paths for, people coming out of an MBA to get, product management internship, that turns into a full-time offer. And I think that's certainly a more expensive way to go about it, but it is often a more straightforward path that kind of, I think, can open doors for you that otherwise you're going to maybe have to like chop down, as opposed to just have them open for you.
I think it's important to, ask, right? What is it that you're trying to do? I think a lot of times, a lot of people kind of just go for an MBA or another educational program because there is a perception that is going to open up either promotions or other opportunities. I think I did my MBA, and it was more so, I think, to balance a lot of those business skills, because I did come from an engineering background, and really kind of it did help. But was that the only route? I don't think so. I, just like Ashley, I'm of the strong belief of, I think a lot of learning happens on the ground as you're doing it. But again, I'm not saying that all of those programs are not good. I think they have their place, but just like Ashley, I think it's really important to make sure you know what you're wanting to get out of it, and then think about the sunk cost, because there is going to be a cost. Now, whether that is time, money, or whether it is, the opportunities and what that ROI or that benefit might look like. So something to think about as well. Moving on to the next one. Have you ever crossed your comfort zone? Was it worth it?
Yeah. Yes, of course. Most recently I did this in defending a hiring decision that I made, and I was really uncomfortable doing it, because it was a decision that a number of my other colleagues within the leadership level didn't agree with, the strategy that I was taking for how I was going to build out our team. And I decided this is a hill I am going to die on. And you have to make those decisions really carefully about what are the things that you are going to put the line in the sand about. And standing up for that is not something that I'm comfortable with at all. I prefer, so, if you do the Myers-Briggs, if you do the Strengths Finder, like, I am a harmonizer, I am a connector, like my strengths in life are bringing people together and helping everybody communicate and understand each other. So, like, pushing myself forward and saying, this is what we are doing and defending it strongly is not something that's comfortable for me. But I felt really strongly in this instance that, like, what I was proposing in terms of how we think about building our team was the right path. And it was built on having done this for a dozen years and knowing the pitfalls that we could get into if we go the cheap route, if we go the convenient route, if we aren't thinking about it longer term, about how we want to grow the team and what we want the makeup to look like. these are things that like I just would not have known without having done it before, but that gave me the confidence to say like, this one is really important to stand up for, and I'm going to go for it. So it was really, it's never comfortable, I don't think. Was it worth it? I would say yes. Partly because I may end up not getting exactly what I want in this, but it was really important to me to be able to go back to my team and say I did everything I could. I represented your concerns and your needs and your preferences to the best of my ability. And with a clear conscience, I can say that. But at the same time, I think I also brought a lot of people over onto my side to say, oh, okay, now I kind of understand why this is important, or why she wants to structure things this way. So I don't think it's going to come to the point where I, have to say, okay, fine, we'll do it this way. Because I do think I was persuasive enough, but I also felt from a team leadership perspective that was one I really needed to go to bat for.
What do you look for, Ashley, when you are hiring someone in your team? I know that's not a question here, but.
Yeah. For me, it's a couple of things, like energy to learn. So I hired a whole lot of people in my career who did not have like the common background, or a lot of experience that was just like, okay, I've done this job for 7 years and I'm bringing you in to continue, you're just going to keep doing the same thing. Like I look for people with energy, with like a fire to learn and to grow and to work hard. I do not want, by work hard, I do not mean, work every weekend, but like somebody who's going to come in and really put their heart behind it. I look for people with humility. That's incredibly important to me. Like, can you tell me what you don't do well, and not just like, oh, I work too hard. I take on too much. That is, sometimes that is a legitimate, issue for some people, but most of the time you gloss over that question, when you get it in an interview. That's not what I'm looking for. I want somebody who is self-aware of what they're good at and what they're not good at. And like that then helps me figure out, am I bringing the right person into the team based on, and I have said this in a number of different places, that like when you're looking for a job, it's not just about, are you qualified for this job, but it's about, are you the right fit for this team and this company right now? Like, are you complementing the strengths of the team and helping fill in the weaknesses? And that is so much more subjective. It's not about, do you know the mechanics of doing this? Can you run this team? Can you actually do the mechanics of the job? It's so much more about the soft skills. It's about, how do you fit in with the team? How does the communication style gel? And that's something I think is just, if there's anybody on the call who is job hunting or who is trying to break into this, I just encourage you to keep that in mind, because it's such a crushing process going through, a job hunt. And it can make you question so many things. And I think it's just important to keep in mind that, so much of the time, it is not about whether or not you're good enough for the job. It's about whether you're right for the job.
Yep. And for those of you, who are in PM, like everyone, I think will say, I think Ashley, you will probably also agree with this, that frameworks don't make a good product manager. The soft skills are so huge, because just like how we started, this fireside where Ashley was talking about influencing without authority, PM is that one of those roles in an organization where you have to work with all of the people. And it's not about saying yes, and it's not about yes to everything. It's not about being the nicest person. It's about enabling those right decisions to make. And in order to do that, a lot of the times it's the soft skills that come handy. You could go and keep on prioritizing with the best RICE framework or this framework or that framework, but we all know that in real world, those conversations about why certain things are being prioritized, you cannot defend because of a use of a framework. You'll have to bring in a whole bunch of your other soft skills in order to really get buy-in from the team. So thank you, Ashley, for highlighting that. Moving on to the next one, how do you deal with adversaries when in charge of complex technical topics? I'm just going to minimize my screen. as a non-engineering background product leader, as I am one myself, or maybe a non-technical product manager too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also, at this point, I do consider myself to be technical, but, for a very long time, I didn't. I don't have a CS degree. I've never been an engineer. I come more from the business side of things. So what I hear in this question is someone pushing back on your suggestions about how something is handled technically. And my advice to that is, I think there needs to be kind of a clear delineation between the business goal and the user behavior that we're trying to accomplish and the technical solution that accomplishes it. And as a product manager, it's not really my job to make those technical decisions. It's my job to make sure that the engineers making those technical decisions understand both what I'm trying to accomplish right now and also where we might be going with this. So if I help them understand, well, we don't need this data right now, but I want to start collecting it because it's going to let us do this thing down the road. Or I want to structure it in such a way that we'll have access to this data over here for this thing that I'm thinking about that we might want to do. Sometimes having those conversations is a lot, is very clarifying for an engineer to think about, okay, well, how do I want to build this then so that I don't cause more work for myself a couple of months down the line when I need to go back and refactor this to account for something that you always knew about but didn't tell me about. So I think I think an engineer should be a partner when it comes to the scoping of the product and the solution itself. Some of the best solutions that my team has come up with have been joint things. We'll bring something to the team and they'll say, well, this would be possible. What do you think about doing that? And it's better than what we could have come up with because we didn't know what was even technically possible to do. So I would encourage you to see your engineers as partners in the solution creation. And then secondly, to not try to get too involved in the technical decisions about how, what is the data model going to look like? Or, how do we optimize? You should be providing the goal to them. Like the goal is we need to get the page load time down because we see a drop off in conversions when the page load time goes above, 8 milliseconds, whatever. That's the goal that you give them. And then you work together to figure out how is it that we're going to do that? And is that worth the investment to the business to accomplish that thing? So I think in that way, you almost sidestep this idea of like needing to be an engineer because you are focused on the goal and the outcome and the user behavior and not so much about the technical solution that gets there.
And Ashley, this is something that is a question that I did get asked a few times, not today, unless it has been asked in the Q&A section, but sorry, there's just a little bit of noise coming in the living room area. How do you deal with, or what do you do if you are a non-technical product manager or a product leader, but then maybe there is someone from your engineering team who might not be as willing to participate with the product team in some of those ideation or scoping? It's more, or perhaps maybe in the organization, there is a belief that engineering teams need to code. They're very valuable resources, and so they should not be in those ideation sessions with the product team to be figuring out any strategies that PMs could use.
Yeah. My snarky answer is that you're going to get better solutions if you do allow your engineers to be involved. Yeah. And that only comes from, if they're not in a solution creation kind of mindset, then they definitely do need to be in a feasibility review and kind of regular check-in as you're coming up with the designs and as you're thinking about things, because the business should be caring about not just did we come up with the right solution, but was it cost effective in what we did? And your engineers are just absolutely critical in helping to make that determination. of, if we did it this way, we could get it done a lot faster. Or what you're proposing here is going to cause us to rewrite a bunch of this stuff. Do you really want us to do that? Sometimes the answer will be yes. Sometimes it is, okay, we need to grit our teeth and do this the right way. And sometimes it's going to be, okay, actually that's not, we don't need to go that far to test out the hypothesis we're trying to test out, things like that. And that's something that I just think without an engineering team involved with, you have a hard time doing that. Now, if somebody doesn't want to be involved with something, everybody has different personalities. You're probably not just working with one engineer. There are going to be engineers or engineering leaders who do have a passion for, what the product is itself. And there are other people who just really want a clear problem to solve. And as long as you give them, the clear direction of like, this is what we're doing right now, then they're good to go. Great. That is how that person is going to be successful. So I don't think you fight it, in that realm, unless there's sort of top-down pressure of like, never talk to the engineers, about this sort of thing. And then I think you just get into a case where what you're building is probably going to be more expensive than it needs to be. So I would then probably try to have some conversations at the engineering leadership level around, maybe it's not everybody on the team. Maybe it's one or two people that you can check in with, so that you make sure that what you're designing and proposing is not just wildly, out of the realm of possibility. Which happens. I mean, you can be the best engineer or product leader, and know your technology really well, and you can still come up with something that they're going to roll their eyes at and say, really, you want that? Like, how much do you want that? So I think those conversations are important to have before you get it in front of the entire team.
Awesome. Thank you. One last question before we move to the Q&A. What are your recommendations for keeping your energy up and not dwelling too much on failures and mistakes?
Yeah, I think it's all just about whether or not it's a learning experience. Like, we're not going to get everything right. Nobody's ever gotten everything right, but I think it's about, can you take the time to reflect and say, this is what I did well, and this is what I did not, do a retrospective on yourself, or on the situation, like, what did I do well? What did I not do well? What did I learn from it? And how do I want to handle it differently next time? And I think one of the things that really separates senior people in any profession from people who are just starting out in it is pattern recognition. And just having done the same thing over and over, to the point where you can see the quicksand before you get to it. And you can say, I stepped in that before, I'm going to do this instead this time. And if you don't ever pull back and focus that energy, not on like beating yourself up, but on saying, okay, that didn't go how I wanted. Maybe I need to prepare, I need to do this XYZ differently next time. Then I think you're just primed to recognize things a little bit better. And I think it's really a little bit of a career hack to be able to do that, because then you make the same mistake twice instead of 5 times, because you're training yourself to recognize what happened and how you want to handle it differently next time. Now, whether or not you remember, what you had decided to do differently, even if you can see it, that's why you kind of want to write it down and reflect on it a little bit.
And Ashley, for those earlier on in their career where perhaps that hindsight or that perspective might not be there as a seasoned product person, any tips on that?
I think if you do a quarterly review on yourself, it can help you really focus in on, okay, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, and how do I want to be focusing my energy and my efforts? Obviously you've got your day-to-day responsibilities, but hey, I'm noticing that I'm really uncomfortable anytime I'm in this type of situation. What do I want to do about that? Do I want to figure out strategies for getting through that kind of situation? Do I want to be looking for roles and responsibilities where I'm not in that kind of situation? And it could be something, that you're going to have to deal with across any kind of team, where you really are going to want to look for, how do I get better and more comfortable in this environment? Or it could be something totally different of like, actually, I don't like working on this type of product, or these types of problems are just not interesting to me. So I think if you will spend like 30 minutes, doesn't take that much time, on a quarterly basis maybe, and keep track of it, of, where do I feel good and energized and confident, and where do I feel the most like reluctant and uncomfortable and just not good about myself. I think it can help you steer both where you put your energy on a day-to-day basis, but then also what kind of roles do you want to be looking for? What kind of, types of companies, that sort of thing.
Okay. Awesome. I am actually just going to shift the gears a little bit. We have 3 minutes, but I want to see if there were any questions. So give me 1 second. Oh, gee. Okay, I'll have to open it up on my phone. Give me 1 second. I think there are a few questions on the Q&A. So the first one, it's all anonymous. I'm not sure who asked, but one question is, what are the costs associated with A/B tests? Is it more common to have these tests?
So, cost, there's programs, there's applications you can use that often do have a cost associated with them that will allow you to kind of tweak and manage your A/B tests. So there's going to be some software costs involved. And then there's probably going to be some costs to, designing the product in 2 ways, or designing the experience. So there's going to be design time, and there's going to be some dev time to code both versions. I personally don't do a lot of formal A/B testing. I do a lot of usability testing to test out A/B variants of a design before it goes into more of like a coding environment. So we do a lot of like, if ever we catch ourselves being like, well, I like that one better. Well, I like that one better. Shut that down and put it into testing, because what you like is not important. How it performs is what's important. So there's very, cheap ways of doing that from just a pure usability standpoint of which one is clearer to people. And then we do a lot of like beta rollouts and things. So I don't personally do a ton with A/B testing. In previous companies, that's been a more built out program. But for me right now, I don't spend a ton of time on A/B testing.
And I'll just share a little bit. I mean, I think it also depends on the product and the context. I see a lot of A/B tests happen, especially with e-commerce, or in occasions where that there might be a lot of, I think of course with A/B tests, you need a lot of data, but I have seen a lot more A/B tests in e-commerce companies that I've been part of. But there is also a misconception and a myth that I've found, that a lot of people believe that A/B test is supposed to be run or defined and executed using an A/B test platform like Optimizer or something. And of course, there are costs with that. A lot of times, like Ashley was saying, if there is a lack of decision and there is a whole bunch of anecdotal conversations that are taking place about this version, or we should just do this, I typically even do A/B tests on usability testing where I show 2 different or 3 different versions. So A/B test really means you're kind of showing different versions, but then how the mechanics of that you do it, there are of course tools available, but then you can also do it in a lot of different ways. Cost, of course, if you're using a tool, there is, but there are also a lot of free A/B testing tools. If anyone's interested to chat, I'm happy to chat afterwards about it as well. There is a second question, Ashley, just if you wouldn't mind staying for a minute. I'm just reading it out. And this is from Hassan Rizvi, and he's saying, I would like to get into product management field, but don't know how and where to start from. I'm currently pursuing MBA in technology management, but have strong technical skills. I look forward to the input from the speaker, host, and the rest of the meeting participants.
Yeah, this is such a tough cookie to crack, or not to crack, I guess.
To break into.
Yeah, to break into. But you know what? I think networking is the first thing I'm going to say. Networking is how you get jobs. It is just how you get jobs. There are women in product groups. There are going to be local groups wherever you are, obviously they're going to be virtual right now, but there's going to be local groups. There's going to be LinkedIn groups. So start networking as much as you can, and the way to do that essentially is to start trying to follow people, connect with them in a way that is not overly asking them for something. If you go to a webinar and you see somebody who is maybe working in the type of job you want or at the company that you want to be at, try to provide something of value to them. Like, most people will put up their LinkedIn profile or, here's how to find me on Twitter, that sort of stuff. You can connect with them in those media by, saying, hey, I ran across an article, that kind of dovetailed on the talk that you gave. It made me think of that. And I just really wanted to, thank you for your time, in that conversation. And that can kind of open a door. Mm-hmm. Where it's not so much of like, hey, thanks, it was great to hear from you, but it's an invitation to kind of start a conversation with someone. Use your former employers, the alumni groups from your former employers. Your MBA is going to be a huge part of this, both the group that you're in school with right now, but also, as they disperse and go elsewhere, those are great groups to stay in contact with. So I think networking is number one. And preparing for the PM interview, many companies have kind of coalesced around generally like a product sense sort of interview and an execution sort of interview, and then more of a soft skills kind of interview. And there's a lot of materials out there from the big tech companies about how they run their interview processes. That's just all out there public. Like, you're probably not going to get somebody who's going to like run one of these practice sessions with you, but you can find the test questions. Glassdoor has a ton of them, especially for like Facebook and some of the other big tech companies. Like, people will post these were my interview questions. So those are good ones to really run practices with, to get familiar with what are you probably going to come up against in some of the interviews. And then, coming out of an MBA, I think the internship route is a really solid one, because they're not like internships coming out of, undergrad, where you're not really doing a whole lot. Like the MBA internships, from what I understand, are really pretty meaty, and they kind of really bring you into what you'd be doing on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, the goal there is that it turns into a full-time offer. So I think you have to put yourself out there, like definitely, be applying to those positions, but understand that, getting through the applicant tracking systems and things is challenging. So, if you can find someone who knows someone at the company that you're wanting to apply to, that's always a helpful way to kind of circumvent some of that. If you can get someone to, and I always like to reach out to someone ahead of time and say, hey, I found a job at this company that I'm really interested in. I would love to hear about your experience working there. And that's not just a platitude. Like, it really is important to understand, what does somebody think about the company? And I have had a former coworker who I met with at a very well-respected company. And she made it very clear that like, she would not recommend me applying in the department, at least, that I'm looking at. And it was super helpful, because I was like, wow, I really respect this company and was excited at the opportunity here. But she was like, it is a mess. Like, it is a mess. You do not want to join that team. So it's stuff like that that's actually really helpful. But then you can also say, a lot of these places have referral bonuses and stuff. So I always like to say, hey, would it be better if you submit my name, or would you want me to just apply first, that sort of thing, so that if they that gives them an incentive to kind of see your application through as well.
And if you're reaching out to employees, sometimes I've myself reached out to ex-employees too, because it's very helpful to get that perspective of why someone left. Yeah. It could have been very on friendly terms, but I think it's really important to understand some of the context and some of the challenges. With all of that, join PM Dojo. I mean, that is a platform for people who are looking to break into PM product management roles, right? Like, there is curated learning that you can access for free. We also have a new initiative that we launched, which is called Launch Up, that helps you work on an idea and solve and build a product yourself. Because a lot of times when you are trying to break into product management, one of the biggest hurdle is to actually highlight those demonstrable skills as a PM. And so that gives you an opportunity, and those are all free. And then of course, if you want to kind of do more of a hands-on learning by doing, then take a look at the accelerator. But PM Dojo is one of those few platforms for aspiring PMs. So take a look at that. But a lot of times I think I really hold true to meeting with the people in terms of getting jobs. Even simple things like, that in PM roles, there will be product sense questions. Are there any things that you can do to start working on those? Take a product that you like and break it apart, tear it apart, and write about it and share it with a few people that you trust before you maybe even publish it. I had gotten a role many years ago, that was before LinkedIn and everything, but I had a deck that I was sharing with people, and I ended up in a role because someone saw it. We had a story from a PM and an associate PM at LinkedIn who shared with our accelerator program, and he said he had written a case study on Lyft and published it on LinkedIn, and he later on got an internship from Lyft because that article and that case study just happened to catch the right eyes. So I think it's really important to show people and demonstrate to people, how you think about a problem, and don't wait until the interview. Because right now there's so many people in the market. I think as a PM, you shouldn't be thinking as a PM only for the product. I think it's very important to think about your career as a PM. So really make sure you have your own value prop really nailed, and what are the things that you can do as a potential PM to differentiate yourself from the competition out there. And resume is one thing, but it doesn't show to the hiring managers, your product aptitude. So what are the other ways that you can actually highlight that, right? Happy to chat, if you reach out as well. I don't see any other questions. Ashley, I really, really thank you so much for being here with us and kind of sharing a lot of those insights. If anyone wants to connect with you, are you open to people reaching out?
Yeah, for sure. I am one of the few people that actually does check LinkedIn. So, you can connect with me on there. And I'm happy to chat anytime. And I very much believe in paying it forward. So that's how you network, and that's how good things come back to you. So
power of karma. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. I will send everyone the recording of our today's deck, and I'll also share Ashley and my LinkedIn profile. So if anyone wants to connect and have any further questions, please feel free. And with that, I give the rest of your day back to you. Thank you so much for attending. See ya. Bye-bye.
everyone.